Here we go. What is it? MN Public Records dropped this from on Kiwi Farms last night. I was asleep. I was laying in my bed, counting sheep, dozing off, and MN Public Records released more documents pertinent to the Rekieta case. Now, this one is back to that June CPS hearing. You know, the one where Nick said, yeah, you know, if one of my kids tested positive for drugs, you know, that was somebody else, wasn't me. It's like, what? We don't know if your kids have tested positive. Why? That's a very odd thing for a man to say, but okay. You never know, you know, that's all I'm saying. Interesting new matter of public record attached. The state rests. So we're like, MN Public Records is doing this like a Star Wars movie, you know? He's just cutting it off at certain points and releasing the next episode later. The state is rested, and finally the defense gets a chance to present their star witness to prove once and for all that Nick's a good boy who didn't do nothing. Yes, notwithstanding a prior transcript's expressed concerns that both sets of grandparents were in the home the week before the removal, Grandpa Bob is here to assure everyone that he has never, ever seen any unsafe parenting. Now, he might be right there, because usually when Bob was in town, he never saw any parenting by Nick. Nick would unload those kids on Bob and Celeste when they got to town. There's at least two things in here, because I've already read this. There's at least two things in here where it's going to make me uncomfortable, because Bob was always very nice to me. I like Bob. I did like Bob. And then I read this. There's two instances in here where I'm going to have to call him a liar, because I saw what he saw at the same time he saw it. And I know too much to just let this guy bullshit, especially when again, it brings up that term affluenza. Let's not forget, we're not talking about some abstract concept here. We're talking about the safety and well-being of 5 children. And we're talking about a man who has a choice to tell the truth and protect 5 children, or lie so that his drug-addled child can get his 5 kids back. And I can appreciate that that's a tough spot for a father and grandfather to be in, while at the same time saying, you pulled a spineless, yellow-bellied chicken shit move here. Grandpa Bob is here to assure everyone that he has never, ever seen any unsafe parenting by Nick, and indeed has not seen him intoxicated or has ever seen Nick to be under the influence of something. Get the out of here. No parent can say that about their child. There's lying to protect your child, and then there's just being an active participant in their delusion. Every parent has seen their kid, whether it's at a family function, a grad party, like, that's a rite of passage. The first time your parents see you drunk and they catch you. That's a thing that we all go through. I've never, ever seen any unsafe parenting. I've never seen him intoxicated. I've never seen him under the influence of anything. Dude. Were you an absentee father? Were you just not there? No. Never seen him under the influence of never seen the kid with a drink in his hand. Don't know why his sink was full of fruit flies and whiskey glasses. Must have been that Aaron. You know, maybe that's what Bob's going to go with. It must have been that damn Aaron. He would come over in the middle of the night when they were all asleep. He'd come over at 11 in the morning, and he would just dump a bunch of dirty whiskey glasses that he found into the sink and make it look like they were all, and then he'd put empty liquor bottles all over the place. What a son of a bitch. I mean, you didn't see your kid under the influence. The minute you walk into Nick's house, you peek around the corner, there's a Lazy Susan full of whiskey bottles. I mean, you never saw him under the, stop it. If you've never seen Nick under the influence, you've never seen Nick. So that's a lie. Indeed, he has never even so much as witnessed any sort of subtle changes of personality in Nick or Kayla that gave rise to any sort of concern that something's wrong. You never saw any of his streams. Now, and Kiwi Farms, they were saying, and they're autistic enough to pull this. they were saying Bob's been in Nick's chat before. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but he's never seen one of Nick's streams where he's all, okay. I'd actually find that more believable than, oh, no, just watching him. I've never seen him. Well, I got to ask Bob a question then. How the hell did this model citizen who's never even appeared to be a little bit tipsy, I mean, you've never seen the guy with a drink in his hand in your entire life. How did he end up with that white powder on his nose whacking off on stream, Bob? I mean, Bob, you and I got to sit down and get to the bottom of this. Something's going on here. Somebody's drugging your boy, Bob. On the other hand, maybe this is MNPublicRecords now. On the other hand, maybe there's just not much of a keen eye for those sorts of things, as he's apparently lived so sheltered in existence as to, quote, not know what someone who uses drugs looks like in the first place, such that he would need YouTube videos brushing up on what you and I might call basic common sense. Remember, the court said that maybe it would be a good idea if the grandparents watch some videos of what a person looks like, because these two apparently have their heads so far up their asses, they can't see that these people are junkies. Maybe he's telling the truth and it's not a good look for you either way. I mean, either you're stupid and you don't know what an intoxicated person looks like, or you're lying. I mean, to the point where in your 60s, you need to watch a video on what an inebriated person looks like. Sweet Christ. Now, MNPublicRecords continues, but that Mr. Magoo routine seems less credible when considering his acknowledgement that he saw cocaine in person in his younger days, along with what a joint looks like, and a bong or needles being the sorts of paraphernalia to look for, only to backtrack to how, quote, a lot of this knowledge is pretty much from television as opposed to personal experience. Wait, which one is it? Have you seen cocaine and needles and shit like that and joints before? Or is your knowledge from television? Well, he wasn't acting like Leo DiCaprio in The Wolf of Wall Street, Your Honor, so I just thought he was fine. It's just, my boy's just jumpy. Signs of drug use aside, back to MNPublicRecords here. Signs of drug use aside, at least he had no choice but to acknowledge messes of clothes in piles waiting to be washed, which apparently was such a problem that when anyone would stay at Bob's house for a couple of days, Bob can, quote, see the messiness proliferating from house to house like a virus spreading from host to host. That checks out, but don't worry, surely it will all be... Now, this was a big lie by Bob. It will surely be swept up by April, whom Bob considers a mere replacement for their old nanny Cheney with no awareness of any other complexity to that relationship. Bob, you're a liar. No offense. That's a goddamn lie. Because you met us, you knew us before Cheney left. Bob, I was at your house when, now, I was this before Christmas or after Christmas, but the kids, you were going back to Florida. The kids were opening up their Christmas presents. I was there. We had dinner. We met. This was December, January at the latest. Cheney was still there. April and I were hanging out with your son and your daughter-in-law. So stop it with the, she was the new nanny. Horseshit, Bob. I was at your lake home. Cheney was still very much in the picture. We were introduced to you as, these are our friends, Aaron and April. So stop. You knew that when you were watching the kids, we were staying over at their house. We all had fun. We all went out. I took you out for dinner, Bob. Did Cheney ever take you out for dinner? Was that the nanny relationship? I mean, at least April told me this is secondhand. Again, I'll tell you when I saw things myself. I'll tell you when I'm getting information secondhand. April told me she was in a group text with you, Bob. So, I mean, maybe it was to arrange rides with the kids. Maybe that was a nanny type of thing. But, Bob, come on, man. Come on. The you meeting April and I timeline overlaps over the Cheney being their timeline. So that ain't going to work. Nick never told you when he left the kids with you that he was going to hang out with us? Never once? I find that hard to believe. You're lying for your kid, Bob. And, you know, this This is what narcissists and addicts like Nick do, is they dirty up other people and they make them worse, because Bob's a better guy than this. I've only met him a handful of times, 5 or 6 times. But he's a better guy than this. He's not a liar. He seems like a jovial, decent dude. But he's covering up for the narcissist that has wrought havoc in his life in his golden years. And he's having to cover. And maybe he deserves it for the way Nick was raised. I don't know. I wasn't there when he was being raised. But this does seem like a classic case of affluenza. And this lie that he considers April a mere, by the way, kind of disrespectful to April that he's like, oh, she's just a mere replacement to Cheney. Okay. Is that how you'd classify her? No awareness to any other complexity to that relationship. Oh, man. Why didn't they call me for this? Like, I could have been there. If I would have known that people were just going to lie their dicks off, I'd have said it straight. Looking to the future of a more supervisory role, Bob curiously thinks it's one thing if Nick and Kayla give a reasonable answer for drug paraphernalia being in plain view, and would only press the issue if the answer is unreasonable. Bob thinks it's one thing if Nick and April gave a reasonable answer for There's no reasonable answer for drug paraphernalia being in clean view. What the f is that, Bob? Nick, why is there a snort tube there? Oh, I'm snorting cocaine. Well, that's a reasonable answer. I mean, snort tube. If there was a snort tube there and you said you were chopping cucumbers, that'd be weird. I might press you on that and ask you what that was. But yeah, that would be used for snorting cocaine. Or at least I've seen on the TV. Shucks. Does it feel good to make yourself be dumber than you actually are just to protect this horse shit? Would only press the issue if the answer is unreasonable. What would such a reasonable answer even be? Indeed, apparently the only scenario where he would call child protection about drug paraphernalia in plain view would be if the kids, quote, the kids were in danger. Name me a time where drug paraphernalia is in plain view and kids aren't in danger. Jesus Christ. I think I know where Nick gets his obfuscating and his making shit up from. That sounds like a Nick answer. Oh, Bob. You think you know a guy, right? This is a bad look. You sound like the Baldo man. If he would only call child protection about drug paraphernalia in plain view would be if the kids were in danger. I agree with MNPublicRecords. He says, as though there's some non-dangerous scenario where he would not call it in. And child protection aside, he certainly doesn't want to speculate on whether or not he'd call law enforcement if things got out of hand. So he's clearly chosen protect my son over be honest and give these grandkids of yours a fighting chance. So he's just saying, whatever gets my son his kids back, I don't give a shit about anything else. See, do you see this testimony? And I know some of you won't say this, but I knew the guy. This kind of shit, in a strange way, makes me feel a little bad for Nick. Because he was clearly brought up wrong. He was clearly brought up with, you're a good boy who's never done anything wrong, and you're our special, beautiful, brave boy. Does someone really stand a chance when they get brought up by that attitude? I wonder, out loud. MNPublicRecords continues, but don't worry yourselves, you pesky Scandinavian incel prudes, because Bob assures you that he's 100% certain that the grandchildren would be safe under his watchful eye. Dude, with some of the answers he'd given, if I was a judge, I don't know if I'd let this guy take care of the kids. I'd only call CPS if the drug paraphernalia was a danger to the children. There is no doubt in his mind that they are in absolutely no danger when in Nick and Kayla's care. I'm just honestly, I want one redemptive character in this whole story, please. I just want one goddamn character in this whole story who's not a ball-washing piece of shit. Public Records continues here. Yep, there is complete confidence in their ability to take care of their kids, despite what we've all seen. And in any event, reunification is utmost priority. whereas a healthy, good environment is right under that priority. First things first. Did he really say that? That's in quotes. Reunification is utmost priority. A healthy, good environment is right under that priority? Wow. Then MN Public Records ends it with, how about a show of hands if and when the time comes for Bob to bear witness to a relapse? Who thinks he will immediately do the right thing and report it to the county? And who thinks he'll be just as likely to give Nick a high five? He'll cover. I mean, as far as sweepers goes, I'm going to say that Nick's dad might have the biggest broom of the bunch.